Alex Jones, and I'm here to tell you folks, the world has fallen. The fascist globalist overlords, they're implementing the Great Reset. You don't believe me? I've seen the tapes. Watch it, folks. Watch as these pot-bellied Zoomer goblins work with the Illuminati to pit us against each other. I promise I'd be a good boy.
I'm a good boy.
There's only one cure, folks, and that's liberty. And there's no better channel to find freedom than Fabian Liberty. Anarchy is order. Government is civil war.
You're offensive. Police lives matter?
We're just trying to do school.
What?
You guys have the same sticker the other.
But this is our space. You're making the space uncomfortable. But you're white.
You're fucking a white male!
What is one way you combat racism? I don't root for white people on the sidewalk.
They want your wallets, they want your guns, they want the wieners off your sons. Democrats.
Oh, we should film
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman! Vaccine!
Children, they're spreading COVID throughout the population at higher numbers. And people are not entitled to turn themselves into deadly biological weapons by spraying disease-laden aerosols wherever they choose, randomly killing innocent people. This is not freedom, this is homicide, and willful ignorance is no excuse.
What the fuck?
Highest margin of victory yet. It's really impressive. Though, I'm starting to think he might have had help from the Russians.
Look at me, I'm a gay frog. I'm so cool, I'm so neat. I'll never have children and I'm sterilized. But the media says I'm totally cool. I'm a gay frog, I'm a gay fish. It's so good, and I think my daddy actually is.
Bro, I wish I was a leftist. Because, lefties are so supportive of each other. They're so collectivist. Y'all just be making up shit, trying to fucking talk trash. Be like, why are you late? I'm not late, you bitches. Fuck are you talking about? I hate you guys sometimes, you little fuckers. There we go. Music should be going now. Well, I'd be forgetting a lot of things. I have been checked. I'm just ADHD. There's not really much to do about it. I have little tips and tricks. Sometimes they work. But should be talking to, I'm not sure who I'm talking to from Honey Badger Radio. A new headset. Yeah, I had to get a new headset. My last one was breaking. I had it last stream. The last stream was the first stream I had it, but I had to get a new one because where's it at? I think I literally already threw it away. It was breaking so bad that it was a problem. It was a Steel Series. Dude, I don't know. Corsair's done me right on everything I've bought from them. Every Corsair keyboard I've gotten has been good. Like I use a liquid cooler Corsair on my CPU and my computer. Corsair power supplies back in the day were really, really good. Their ability to like their CPU coolers that are like fan coolers, the heavy duty ones were good when those came out. I've just never had a problem with the Corsair product. I mean, I've heard bad things. I've heard about people like some of their like proprietary programs like having issues. Yeah, but my SteelSeries sucked. I mean, I have a Razer keyboard right now. But that's because I have a Razer mouse and they just kind of work well together. But I've never had an issue with Corsair. I will say this though: have you guys like we're just kind of all off on it? We're going to talk about USAID and libertarianism as it applies to Redpill with somebody from fucking Honey Badger Radio. I think I might be talking to that guy again. I don't remember who I DM'd, but there was like something on Twitter, and I was like, "Nah, I disagree." And I was like, "I'll talk to you about this." So then we set this up, but it's kind of been a thing going on. You know what? Fuck politics. Let's go play Baldur's Gate 3. Dude, go talk UAPs? What? What? Why would I? Okay, anyways. I do have a Corsair cooler and PCU. PCU? What the fuck is a PCU? Oh, power supply unit. Well, no, that would be PSU. The fuck is a PCU in a computer? I don't know that much about computers, so. Oh, that is the power supply unit? Is called PCU? Why is PCU? No, but when I type PCU computer, there's a section on Newegg that says PCU. And that's where power supply, like I'm not bullshitting. Like, hold on, look. Like, I was like, what's a PCU? It's right. It's up there in the corner. You can't, my green screen's not that far, but it says PCU up there. So apparently PCU is perfectly acceptable version of PSU. Like, you're not crazy. Like you typoed and you were somehow correct even with your typo. And I was confused. And like, I was like, no, I got to look this up. What is that? Apparently it's a thing. I'm not going senile. What the fuck? Fuck you guys. 2.4 million views, Andrew Tate and PBD podcasts. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't stand Andrew Tate. We kind of talked about it a little bit before, but I just don't, anybody that's like, I'm a big Andrew Tate fan, I'm just like, all right, either you haven't looked into the shit at all, or like, you just excuse pedophilia as long as the guy's saying it's based. It's unfortunate how popular Andrew Tate is. He made a bunch of his money in crypto, to be fair. It wasn't just by sex trafficking women. Your dad loves the guy, Andrew Tate? That's wild. Ask him how many little girls he's fucked. I don't know, man. Like, is your dad a pedo? Are you okay, Trexamon? Do you need to tell me some secrets, Trexamon? The title is Redpilled, is it not? I mean, it's not red-pilled. It's Libertarian Red Pill. I have some things I'd like to talk about. We spoke about, if you were here for the Grid Motorsports, I had a pretty long conversation about it. But I think libertarianism is actually the solution, the red pill. It is the real solution. Real libertarianism, not this like lefty prag, everybody should do whatever. Like, that's the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. But actual libertarianism, like abolishing social security and welfare and public schools, that's going to solve the red pill, the modern dating situation. No one wants to work hard. I mean, somebody has to work hard. And if no one wants to work hard, then they either have to use violence to leech off of that person, or they have to figure it out themselves. And when you use violence to leech off that person, you get less people working hard, and the people that do work hard achieve less. Your dad joining social media was a mistake. Yeah, I don't know what my dad's social media is like, but I don't want to know because I know my dad's pretty racist sometimes and fucked up. Like, I feel like it would be really rough. Is libertarian socialism a real thing? I mean, it's a real thing. It's just not libertarian in like the American vein, right? So libertarian as a term, right, used to refer in Europe, contemporaries of like the anarchists, right? When I say the anarchists, I mean like Proudhon and like Benjamin Tucker, Lysander Spooner, at the same time that we have communism first coming to be, right? All these social revolutionary political ideologies as monarchies begin to, begin to crumble and things, and political philosophies begin to flourish, and the French Revolution and all this stuff, right? So libertarianism or libertarian at that time was used by this guy named de Jacques. And de Jacques was a political philosopher that is like a left-wing anarchist, maybe not like full-blown anarcho-communist, more of like an anarcho-syndicalist in terms of like beliefs with like a little bit of mutualism sprinkled in. And then he kind of just fell out of fashion and nobody cared about him and nobody used the word libertarian even in like anarchist circles. So when Rothbard discovered Benjamin Tucker's writings, because they were like only in one library and they had almost been lost in a fire in New York, and began to develop his anarcho-capitalism, with Austrian economic theory, going further down the route of anarcho-individualists of the American vein, which would be Spooner, Josiah Warren, Benjamin Tucker, Voltaire and de Cleyre, etc. Right? He took the name libertarianism, was like, this is our name. This is what we are. We are libertarians. And then what happened was this pissed off a bunch of lefties that absolutely hate ANCAPs. And so they were like, you can't have that word. That word actually means this. And so libertarian socialism, lib-socs, right? Especially in Europe, because libertarianism, as we're talking about it, is an American ideology. Especially in Europe, are very like, they're like, that's not what libertarianism is. Libertarian socialism and things like that. So like, yeah, like they're just not, it's real. It's just not, it doesn't have anything to do with us other than the name and other that it's like, that like historically it was a term that some people used for a branch of anarchist thought. That's where it comes from. And so you'll get like weird people that like try and argue definitions and shit and be like, you don't even know what libertarianism is, because they're talking about this. They're talking about lib-socs. They're talking about libertarian socialism. Libertarian socialism was never the original root of anarchism at all. It's a oxymoron. Well, yeah, but like I'm not making that claim. I'm just making the claim that there was a guy named de Jacques that like wrote in magazines and like had his own brand of anarchism that he called libertarian socialism. The lunatic libertarian, you're not allowed to say those things. You can't have a name like that and then just randomly be like, most libertarians do not possess the skill set to repel an enemy that would end your existence, and then call yourself the lunatic libertarian. I mean, it's very on the nose, I'll give you that. Like, it sounds like you're recruiting for a compound right now. Like, stop it. Don't do that. Well, a lot of people throughout history have had a lot of backwards ideas that make no sense. But I mean, his were not even like coherent enough to be popularized. The only reason they got revived is because of Rothbard, because the lefties wanted to be like, oh, you can't have that name. That's our name. Well, you cultivated vanity. They cultivated the sword. I mean, like, Crod, like, talking about the history of anarchism gets weird because, like, every word, like tracking down the original usage of words gets to be really problematic because with enough history, like with enough knowledge and enough like ability to like we will discover words were used by somebody at some point in the maybe in the right context, maybe in a different context, 100 years before somebody else, right? But like Proudhon in like especially in that's Kropotkin in Property is Theft, right? Like that's the modern father of anarchism. Like there's anarchist ideas before that. There's people calling themselves anarchists, right? Like originally anarchists meant anti-monarchical, right? Like there is, you know what I mean? Like you're going to find words used, throughout history sprinkled in some capacity. When I try and follow the thread of like terms and ideologies, I tend to just go with like those people that made it majorly popular to the point where it became a movement as opposed to like one or two people having an idea, is when it became such a large moniker and an insult for the left, and then eventually they embraced it. Am I still doing gaming streams in the future? Probably, yeah, for sure. I want to try some gaming streams like during the week and stuff, because next week I no longer have to pick up my son, so I'm gonna have more time, and I don't know what I'm gonna play. Like right now I'm playing classic WoW just for fun. I might do like some raids or stuff on stream and just shoot the shit. But like if something fun comes out that I want to play, I definitely might check it out. Like I kind of want to check out Monster Hunter World, or Monster Hunter Wilds, but like apparently it's like got a lot of a lot of people that don't have top of the line games, or sorry, PCs, like Boba Tea. Not realizing that Boba Tea's, they're just like, we'll do Asian things. You'll like this, right, guys? And like piss off a bunch of people. They're like, hey, man, Boba Tea's from Taiwan and is really popular in Korea and Japan, sure. But like, what the fuck, man? Like, it's like you guys suck at history now. When did you guys start sucking at history? Yeah, they were like Boba Tea, the new Assassin's Creed Shadows set in Japan, and like Taiwanese people were like, "Hey, asshole!" Like, like he was like, "What are you doing?" There's so much controversy with like the historical inaccuracies and problems with that. But I'm about to hop in here, so let me cut my camera off, put it on that, and then do that, and then we'll do that. All right. Start virtual cam. There's one of my my AI made ANCAP waifus, boys. Yo, what is this music that's playing? Hold on, next. Hey, can you hear me?
Your microphone appears to not be set. I'm not sure. It's showing grayed out. Can you hear me? Not if you can hear me. Okay. Maybe could try leaving and coming back. When I look at what microphone you have selected, it just says microphone 1, and it doesn't really, I don't know if you have like a Shure or some brand of mic, but it's not showing that. So try. Yeah, I'm
just gonna leave. Come back. It won't let me pick any microphone other than just microphone 1. What the hell is this? Hold on. Let me make sure. Why does everyone always have like a different fucking program? They're like, have you tried this new program? Like, can't we all just like come together on one program? All right. So I have a virtual audio cable, and it doesn't show me any other audio sources. And then it just says speaker 1. I don't even know if you guys can hear that. Well, you probably can hear it because I was hearing it. What am I supposed to? What do I just pray to Omnisaya? Is that like how I'm supposed to get the microphone to work? What am I supposed to do? Every other program has worked fine. I can't.
Still showing grayed out.
Yeah.
Are you using, I don't know if it matters, but I assume you've given permissions to your microphone. Are you using a Chrome browser or like Brave? Because that's what I use. I should work with that. If you're on Firefox or something, it might not be.
Nope, I'm using
it might not
Brave.
work. I don't know if that's an issue, but
I'm using Brave. Hold on, he can't hear me. We might have to figure out something else out. Give me a second. Yeah, that's the problem. Is that like I am using Brave. Like Brave is not Brave's not really the issue here. Oh, someone subscribed during the technical difficulties. Well, I appreciate it, whomever it was. Okay, again. Yeah, it just gives me microphone 1. Like it doesn't give me and I don't have this issue on like any other, like it obviously has my sources. Let me see. Where can I check like the default microphone sources on Brave? Do you guys remember that? Oh, yo, thanks for the gifted subs. I'm dealing with oh my god, let me search. Where can I search the settings? Content. Okay. Font size goes. Okay, content and then microphone, but there's no microphone thing under content. Hold on, let me try it that way. Wow, when did that happen? Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay. There we go. That ought to work. Can you hear me now?
yes.
At some point, I did a Windows update recently, and I guess that's what did it. It just like it switched off my Brave browser from having permission on.
I see.
For my microphone.
Well, thank you. Sorry for putting you through that. I like this program because it has a lot of customization and allows me, to set up my open broadcaster software the way I like it. So
yeah, for sure.
Thanks
Can we get the people mid screen? It's just like the most of the screen is like turquoise mountain, whatever that is.
Oh. That's not what I'm going to be displaying for the people watching. So the call itself, what you see is not what it looks like on my video.
I'm streaming. So like all I have is two tiny little fucking. Yeah, I'm a streamer as well. So I'm streaming and all I have is like these little baby things on the side.
I can customize what it. I don't know if I can change what it looks like. Let me think here. Well, you know what I could do, because you don't have to look at the turquoise mountain thing, really. I mean, you could look at it on your own. I could instead stop sharing that, and then it would just be the two of us. So
that's fine.
Yeah, we can do that. So let's stop sharing this.
Or like when you want to show it to me and like talk about it or whatever. Like we can do it then.
Yeah. I don't even need it. So we can just let me just grab the correct thing here to make this look a little bit nicer, a little bit presentable. All right, let me see. That looks all right. And if you want to see,
it's I know what Turquoise Mountain is, anyways. Like I know about that specifically, so it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm just showing it to sort of show the jumping off point. I'm not really gonna be talking specifically about Turquoise Mountain. So, but okay. So let me go ahead and get us started here. And how much time do you want to spend?
This is the only thing I'm doing tonight. This is not a normal streaming night for me. So like, however much you want to do is fine.
Okay.
I have two things I want to talk about. One, I kind of already DM'd you about, was the crux of the conversation. And then the other we can get into later if we have time. So,
sure. What's the other thing? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not trying to like jump you or anything. I've been really like looking at Redpill and MRA, MGTOW, the whole manosphere kind of situation. And realizing that there's very little solutions offered other than ways in which men can behave that is better, to be better.
I feel like I think we talked about this before. Like when I talked to you the first time, we did like a show together. Mm-hmm. If you remember that,
it's been a while, but I really want to start to start talking more about the concepts of libertarianism and how they solve all of these problems. And most people don't connect those two things. Social security, welfare, public schools. I think these things are the actual causes of many of these problems, not wokeness, feminism, or modern women, so to speak. I think these are symptoms.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're going to argue about that. I mean, I've talked about it. Yeah. No, I know that you're. Yeah, I know that you describe yourself as a debate me bro or debate bro, but I don't really see an issue with what you're saying because I've talked about it myself. But okay, so I have a little intro that I play. Just so you know, we're not doing this on since the last time you and I talked, I started my own channel because I wanted to like focus more on the ways in which my views are a little bit different from the main channel I work at, even though I overall agree with the folks at HBR, but I want to be able to say my piece. So I have a channel called Honey Badger Arcade. It's mostly about culture because I have a background in art and it's kind of how I got involved with this. And I care a lot about where, having a healthy culture. I haven't started the show yet. I'm just telling you what I'm about. So this is on my channel.
I'm always live. Yeah.
Yeah. This is on my channel. I'm also I do interviews and I'm always doing stuff. So all right,
guys,
playing my intro.
Honey Badger Radio, Honey Badger Arcade. Check out some gaming.
Yeah.
Check out my boy.
Yeah, I have a gaming channel. That's what Honey Badger Arcade is, but it's also about building community and sharing ideas and talking about the culture and arts and all that in general. So I have like I think that we'll get into it when the show goes. So I'm just playing my intro right now.
Yeah, I have one of those. I need to make a new one, but like the one I have is so fire that like.
You have a gaming channel. I saw that.
Oh no, not the gaming thing. I mean like my intro video for my stream. Like I need a new one. I need to make a new one, but I just don't think I can make one as good as the one I have. But the one I have is like dated.
All right, here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Arcade. My name is Brian, and this is, I'm doing like sometimes I try to get guests on to talk about the culture or interview them about things that they're working on, or just like, shoot the shit with people that are sort of, at least tangentially, if not very much embedded in this what I like to think of as a conversation. That if you know me, you know that I've always been about fostering conversation, especially with people who maybe they have a unique perspective, because they have a specific focus or whatever. And we can always learn from that. So today I have the esteemed pleasure and honor of talking with Fabian Liberty. I had him on my show when I work. Well, I still work at Honey Badger Radio, but we had a fireside chat at Honey Badger Radio where we talked about the sort of intersection between the men's rights issues and libertarianism. We've also spoken to many people about this, and a lot of the people who work at HBR are libertarians or even ANCAPs. But I thought we would talk about something a little bit different, since Honey Badger Arcade is more about the culture and the sort of like the arts and all of that. And first of all, Fabian, thanks for coming, and welcome to my small little corner of the internet.
Yeah, I mean, mine's just as small. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's just a small corner of the internet as well. That's kind of what happens when you are a principal's first person. Is your corner of the internet tends to be fairly small, as opposed to so many other people that I think we could name but won't.
Yeah. No, I'm not throwing shade. I just know that the internet works the way it works, and actually I like talking to the people who are smaller, because they usually, it's usually because there is something that they have to offer, bring to the table that I think is unique. So that's
you find a lot of niche things with smaller channels, right? Like the larger channels are large because they appeal to a wide audience, and that's great and that's awesome, and you need those people. But my small corner of the internet here is anarcho-capitalism, really looking into the philosophy, legal ethics. But there is overlap with certain cultural contexts and things. I went to grad school for counseling. My background's in psychology and sociology. And normally I'm usually debating econ and philosophy, which is funny because I didn't go to school for that. That's all stuff I had to learn as a layman. But I am excited. And the initial kind of like crux or beginning of this conversation, on Twitter, is I had saw you kind of briefly speaking on Twitter about, USAID and the way that the USAID was funding, very neo-Marxist, critical theory, woke bullshit with our tax dollars. And I kind of had a bit of a critique. Maybe I came in hot, but that's Twitter. I'm always hot on Twitter. And I was like, nah, dude, like that's the surface level of what's going on. And he was like, I was like, but let's talk about this. You know what I mean? Because I think there's a lot to unpack about what USAID is, and the history of USAID and how it works, and looking at its cross sections with intersectionality, or I don't know why I said intersectionality. That wasn't the right word. That's just the one that came out of my mouth. With like critical theory and like, woke corporations and all these institutions, and it's just a lot to unpack. And I feel like a conversation would be a much better place for that than like back and forth arguing on Twitter about it.
Yeah, I don't usually get involved with Twitter spats because they tend to be unproductive, and I'd rather just talk to people. And because again, I'm not here to like win debates. I guess that's why I stay small, because I'm not like going on and fighting with people. But I will say about that, yes. So what I said, and I don't have I'm not a paying X user. I'm just too poor. So I have a limited number of characters. But basically, I was saying that essentially USAID is exporting kind of, revolutionary art to destabilize the Middle East or whatever countries they're sending it out to. And it's kind of a short version of that. And if I remember correctly, your response was, it's just essentially the exportation of neoliberalism. Yeah. And I don't want to misrepresent, but that's kind of like where we were at. And then you messaged me and you were like, we could talk about this more if you like. Is that about right?
I think it's more. Yeah, I think it's more of a Venn diagram, and looking at it at only one perspective limits the understanding of what's going on. So I wouldn't say that that's not what's happening. I would just say that that's not the primary goal. That's not the primary purpose, as far as I see.
Okay. Yeah. No, I get it. That's fair. I think that where we're coming at this from might be a little bit different, because I'll just a little bit about myself. So ever since I was young, I was interested in art, and I went to art school. And guys, if you're interested in art, do not go to art school. Just don't do it. It is going to put you several $1,000s in debt. You're not going to learn anything about it except, communism good. And that's basically what my education was. And what I learned from that is that art, at least in the modern time, and I mean any art, whether it's stuff you want to put into a museum, or you want to sell in a gallery, or you want to work for the city or whatever, it's almost all really just about marketing, and marketing is about political awareness, right? So the whole let's say the whole apparatus of art itself has changed over time, and but it's been going on since before I was born. And what I learned, I studied art history, and I realized that no one in the art business wants to make anything beautiful. They only want to make things that make a statement. And the reason why I'm saying all this is because what I'm for is a return to beauty. And the reason is because I believe that beauty is truth, and that there is an ethics of aesthetics or of beauty itself, and that we've moved away from that in the world of art for the purposes of, political points or a kind of activism that has replaced it. And so that's where my mind is at. I'm not looking at
this. Can we start there before we actually get into the USAID? Because there's a lot interesting there. So my philosophy of art mostly is grounded in objectivist philosophy, right? So to state what I believe about art is that I do believe that all art is a statement, and that statement is it is an idealized world of the artist, right? It is the idealized self, and it is a means. All art has an objective is objectively making some form of statement. Now, just because that statement is made doesn't mean that you, as the viewer of the art, or even the artists themselves, necessarily can fully communicate or understand what that statement is, right? But when an artist makes a piece of art, they put their values into that art, right? And that speaks through their art. And I think you can see this even in art that is like, I think a really famous example was like that recent statue of like Martin Luther King hugging his wife, and it was like from certain angles it looked like dicks.
Yeah. It looked really weird.
It looked really weird. It was ugly. And so like, what do you confer from that? Well, from the first moment of seeing it without any context, right? You're like, this is a disembodied human figure. So where is the human figure in a statue? Why is it away from the human figure? Well, it's away from the human figure because it's not about the achievements of a great man. It's about the revolutionary aspects of an ideology and creating a formless piece of art that expresses political ideology. And then you look into the artist and you see that he's like, super fucking woke, that everything that he has is very race-based, right? And so even if the design in the artist's mind, the intention, right, is to, just make something for the city that's about Martin Luther King, all of his values are laden within the art. And so that's how I view art. And so when I hear like, I want to return to beauty, what I'm hearing is I want to return to form. I want to return to aesthetics. I want a return to craft, right? Craftsmanship being an obvious part of art, and a lot of modern art. Well, it's actually, we're not in modern art. Modern art ended like in the 70s. We're in like what comes after modern art? You would know this. You went to art school.
Well, we don't normally name.
It's just called contemporary.
Yeah, I was going to say contemporary, but that's just another way of saying modern. When you know what the word contemporary means, we don't usually, like, when it comes to art movements, they don't get named until like a long time after they've ended. Right. So it's not like people who were around, like Vincent van Gogh wasn't saying I'm an impressionist. Nobody knew what that was. It was just what they were doing. And then many, many years later, people look back on that and they called it the Impressionist period. So I think the same. I just want to make the distinction that when we say contemporary,
art, we mean contemporary. We're not really talking about, fucking Andy Warhol. Like we're talking about what's occurring today. Right. But yeah, so like, I totally agree with you that art has, well, I wouldn't call it art, or at the very least I would call it evil art. I wouldn't call it.
Okay. Let me just, I'm just to real quick. I want to get in here. So one of the things, so you're an ANCAP, and I know that, and I know we talked before. One of the things I said that I was going to point out before we got started was one of the things that I think I like about you, at least from what I remember from our previous conversation, was that you felt it important that these libertarian philosophies be married to a moral hierarchy. Like you want to be, you want to marry morality to it so that it's not simply I guess, you would probably explain it better than me. Am I correct in remembering that? Okay.
What I would say is that one of the largest problems with libertarianism is that people view libertarianism like they do other political philosophies, and they're not the same, right? Marxism, for example, right? Let's use Marxism or Christianity or, fascism. All of these, right, have a positive position about what you ought do and what you should achieve and what a good state or a nation or a culture, society, people looks like. Libertarianism is a legal, ethical theory. It doesn't say whether or not prostitution is good or bad. What it says is you're not allowed to grab guns and go kill prostitutes just because you disagree with them, right? So the problem with that is there's a lot of unlearned libertarians, right, that go, well, this is just the market, so isn't that good? It's like, well, why do you want to stop people from freely engaging in voluntary behavior and transaction? And it's like, just because I'm not going to use guns doesn't mean I want that shit around my kids, right? And so the important, where you're kind of catching on, I think here, where we probably talked before, is that, like, if you're going to be a libertarian, you cannot be a libertarian only. Like, libertarianism is a skeleton in terms of comparison to other political philosophies. And so you need a moral philosophy that is commiserate with libertarianism to have a functional society. The only two that I have found are objectivism and Christianity. Now, I lean towards objectivism. I am an atheist. I'm not a Christian. But these seem to be the only two moral philosophies that I've found thus far that are that can be commiserate with libertarianism.
Yeah, I think that you and I are very similar in that, except that I lean towards Christianity, as you can see.
Yeah, I can see behind you,
but
you can see the iconography on the wall,
Yeah. But because of that, though, I do what I guess I'm getting at is that, yes, there must be a morality married to a moral frame, some kind of moral system attached to libertarianism, because libertarians should be the ability to choose the good. And I mean, like, that's what I think the best thing that can offer. So going back to the art, you said something about evil art. And so first of all, I'm not saying that, like, art that I don't like shouldn't exist, for example. But what I think has happened, though, is that all things, in my view, do operate in a hierarchy of, like, best to worst. And that is not necessarily me saying that this shouldn't exist because it's worse. Because I understand that we live in the world, and in the world there are things that we're not going to like. Like, it's part of understanding that life is.
Let me give a comparison, right? So I would consider video games a form of art, right? Now let's look at two video games that we can compare, and I think it very quickly elucidates in the culture war what we're talking about. Right, so let's look at Dragon Age Origins.
The Veilguard? Oh, the
Origins. Veilguard. Right?
This
is the same company of people working collectively to produce an art piece that is also meant to be consumed by the population. And so if you play Veilguard and you play Dragon Age Origins, right? You play these two games, you will see that despite the fact that it is just a system of combat, it is also a narrative. It's also a story. But more than just the narrative or story, you can see the values that the creators have seep through in the narrative and the story, right? And the values that are expressed in Dragon Age Origins is a hero story. It is a classical mythological tale. It is, it's a monomythological structure, really, like Star Wars is, or like most hero mythologies are, right? Like you play a character. Now, obviously, you can play whatever character you want, but you play a hero, right? And you are, you get kicked out of wherever you are for some reason, depending on the background that you chose, right? Yeah. And you have to save the world. And part of that is resurrecting the father, right? Like, like in some parts it's literal if you play a dwarf that you have to bring back your family's honor and go through and correct the family structure. But even the major narrative is that it's all of the elements you can see throughout it. The mythological tale of what a young man ought to aspire and be, because it's a game to tell a narrative and story that is a good story, and the story comes first. And you look at Dragon Age Veilguard, and it's like, oh, we have all of this other shit that may or may not conflict, and we have all these player choices. Well, we have to get rid of them. So all that stuff that you did, all that's been destroyed by a blight. So anyways, we're in Teventer now, right? And it is laden with philosophical bullshit that you can't even challenge or engage with in any way. You have to agree to a transgender queer theory, ideology, non-binary, and it's
you got to pull a barv.
And the reason I say it's evil art, right, is that when the artist is attempting to make these narrative, they can't help but be evil in order to make a narrative structure. When you look at the person that is like lecturing everybody about, gender ideology, they're the worst character. Like they're not a likable character. And it's like they couldn't make them a likable character because the ideology conflicts with being a likable person because it contradicts reality. And so you see them and they're shitting on other people for like their relationship status. They're making fun of their identities. They're bullying you in conversation. Like throughout the entire thing, they're the worst character. And it's, that's what I mean is that the art, when the art takes shape, art is symbolic representation, right? There are many forms of communication. Robert Bella had 4 major forms of communication, which is the unitive experience, the symbolic experience, the narrative experience, and then the theoretical experience. And we speak in narrative form, right? That's the only way we can really communicate ideas effectively. Even if you write a scientific paper, you have to write it as a story. It might not be a story, but it says, we did this, and then we did that, and we subjected it to this, right? Like that's how we speak. Well, another way that we speak is through symbolism. When we're trying to communicate things that are at the edges of our understanding, or when we're trying to create things like that's what art does. It communicates things that are difficult to communicate. And so that's what I mean when I say evil art.
Yeah.
A great example of evil art is Dragon Age Veilguard.
Right. And so the trick is, and I don't disagree. I think that another way, I guess you could say, because people in the chat, on my chat, are saying it's a difference between art and propaganda. Yes, but I think to some degree we're all trying to like convince people of something when we make art or tell stories. We're trying to communicate something, but whatever it is does exist on a hierarchy. So there are, good ideas and there are bad ideas. And you could be communicating bad ideas. And you could even see them as unethical or even immoral, therefore evil. But the problem is with most people, they don't, when they look at what you just described, if you just told somebody to say, oh, well, I think Dragon Age the Veilguard is evil art and Dragon Age Origins is good art, then people would not understand that, because obviously Dragon Age the Veilguard is, it's very recent, it's running on the newest technology, it's got like, whatever the most cutting edge graphics is. How could you possibly not see it that way? And of course it does come down to, but even setting aside the narrative stuff, the characters are ugly. And so just the art design itself is ugly. And yet people would say, but that's
the
just
more famous
your
example would probably be Concord, right? Like Concord is aggressively ugly on purpose.
Yes. I made a number of videos about Concord and how like all the ways that the art direction was just completely awful, and I just used silhouettes. I just said, look at the silhouettes, and that this is so what that means is because people would say that it's just your point of view, and that's kind of this postmodern death of the author kind of way of approaching it, where if you don't like something, it's not because it's bad, it's because you and I just have different tastes, and that's just like a cope. But it is something that happens a lot, and that comes back to marketing. And so, but yeah, I don't disagree with any of that.
I would say all art is a form of propaganda. But like, let's look at two different.
But I don't think
propaganda.
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that all. But I agree that all art is a kind of propaganda in that it is trying to say something and communicate an idea or maybe even change your mind or get you thinking about a certain thing. But not all propaganda is equal. Like some is good, some is bad in terms of like what it desires or what it advocates for, and some of it is well done and some of it is not well done. Like
so
hand twisted stuff like Dust
we can look
Lords,
at like architecture, right? And
Mhm.
let's look at Gothic architecture in terms of churches that were built. And immediately what comes to mind is spires and stained glass and, giant buildings. And so, you can have an interpretation that says that it is evil because it is producing a concept of like God as an authority over man, and it is against man, etc. And as an atheist and as a, mostly an objectivist, in many ways I would agree, but there are other things that are communicated there, right? Craftsmanship is communicated, number one. Aspiring towards the heavens is communicated. We can look at the openness and the concept. One of the things I love about Orthodox churches, as opposed to other churches, is the design of the church is as such that the choir is behind you. And then the choir sings, and as you experience, the liturgy, you are having so where the choir and the harmony rolls through a large echoed chamber so that you get, reverberations and you get doubling of, when you get echoes, right? You get this open and this almost mystical experience that has occurred. And then you can look at like modern architecture, not those that are looked at, not just those made for function, right? Not just cheap apartment
like the
buildings,
brutalist, like blocks, right?
But like brutalist architecture. And what is brutalist architecture, especially when it's state buildings, telling you? It's telling you that you are not an individual. It's telling you that you are a cog in the machine. It's telling it is a socialist message through architecture, a collectivist message that the individual that sticks out is a problem, and that the aesthetic and individual beauty of man is a problem. It is oppressive as an architectural structure, and it is grayscale. It is muted colors. Like so what I'm saying is that you can have multiple interpretations of art, and your personal experience can be subjective in art. But what I'm also saying is that the artist has values, and the commissioner of the art has values, and these values are inexorably linked to the art that is then made. And so because of that, if you understand the value, the more you understand about the artists themselves and the motivations behind the artists, the more you begin to understand what the propaganda is that they are selling. And if I have to pick and choose between Gothic architecture that is aspirational, that is beautiful, that is open, that is full of color, that is full of life, and is almost communicating an aspect to reach towards goals, to achieve more, and to come together to look towards the stars and align towards the more perfect good, versus brutalist architecture that tells me that I'm small, that I'm a cog in the machine, that I am worthless, that the colors and the happiness ought not be there. I know which one I'm picking every fucking day of the week, and I know which one I'm going to tell you is evil art and which one I'm going to tell you is good art, and I know which one is good propaganda and which one's bad propaganda.
Yeah. I mean, like if you like as an example of good propaganda, like let's say Rocky IV, where he fights Khal Drogo during the Cold War. I mean, that was like uplifting, and it was very aspirational and positive. And Sylvester Stallone was like, he was always that way. Like all of those movies have that positive, like keep on punching theme that runs through them. I mean, it's obvious that it was made, yeah, exactly. You can change, I can change. But that was like what we wanted in that moment. And it is, I mean, I wouldn't pretend like that's not what it was. It wasn't like, it was obviously pro USA propaganda, but it was, it was like, it was good.
Funded.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I did get one super chat. I'm just going to read it really quick. And then I want to talk, because I mean, what we're kind of getting at is something about art that I think is particularly interesting. But Master Gawa, thank you, Master Gawa. He gives me $10, man. Thank you so much. And he says USA exports LGBTQIA plus agenda. USAID and National Endowment for Democracy are the vehicles to export those left values. They socially engineer culture to control the future to achieve a gayer feminist world. All right. Thank you for that.
This gets us into the topic, I think, right? So
yeah,
I want to respond to that, right? I agree. The problem is that I think it's this understanding USAID and understanding the corporate kind of structure and, you know, the cathedral, right, is like an onion, and there are layers. And I'm so fucking happy that Elon Musk and Trump have come in like a bull in a china shop and have begun to peel back the first layer. And what I would say is that that is the first layer. And to really do this justice, we're going to have to start with, where does critical theory come from?
Oh, I know where it comes from.
For sure,
but
there's an audience,
but yeah,
right?
but yeah. But I think that the people who watch me, they're pretty smart on this stuff. But we can, if you want, we can talk about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So so the first thing to understand, right, and I'll gloss over it since we both have a smart niche audience, right, is, you know, communism is failing, Marxism is failing, the intellectual elite are, you know, recognizing this. You know, the Berlin Wall hasn't fell, obviously. The Iron Curtain hasn't fell, but the Iron Curtain's beginning to fall. And leftist philosophy is also moving forward, right? Leftist philosophy is going into concepts of postmodernism. And so you have this perfect
hurtling
storm
towards the end of history, as it were.
Right.
But
well,
go ahead.
The thing here is that communism isn't going to work in Europe, right?
Mhm.
And so you have some people. So you have three types of people that really come together in the Frankfurt School to create neo-Marxism or to create critical theory. Type one is the true believer in Marxism that recognizes, Gramsci's prison papers, right? The Marxist that was in when he wrote in the Italian fascist prison.
And Gramsci, right?
Gramsci.
Okay.
I don't know. I know it by reading it.
I've heard it pronounced Gramsci. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same guy, but go ahead.
Yeah. So right. So he's saying, look, there are all these cultural institutions that are keeping us from having a true revolution, right? Religion, family, etc. And so long as these institutions remain strong, you know, the Marxist revolution will never occur in these places. Or what you will get is reactionaryism, which is what fascism is as far as the communist Marxist perspective, right? Is that, you know, Marxism begins to rise, and then fascists take elements of Marxism and then blend it with those cultural institutions and fight back in a right-wing reactionary way while still maintaining some socialist, some Marxist kind of ideas. That's what you see in Nazi Germany. That's what you see in Catalonia. This is what you see in every instance of it. So that's one type, right? They're true believers. They want to take down those institutions. Number two are new left, new people, new socialists, the Marcusians, if you will, right? And the Marcusians and the postmodernists have this weird alliance where they go, yeah. We want a state. We don't want the Marxist utopia. We want a nation state. We want corporations. But what we want is we want to constantly give more democracy, give more, freedom, give more freedom in their sense, which would be, positive freedom, welfare redistribution, things like that, not negative freedom, which would be like protection from the government from taking your money or violating your rights. So more freedom, more things, and the more democracy we have and the more education and the more we make the material conditions for the poor better, the more we will have a more perfect state, and the state will be like God, right? And that it will become the perfect state because multiple iterations and failures will keep getting better and better and better. And then you have a third group of people, and these are people like the Rothschilds, people like corporatists, corporations that know that Marxism is a genuine threat to their power. That Marxism and class consciousness and revolution is going to destroy what they have and what influence they have, what power they have, their lives, right? And so they're willing to fund and support critical theory because it is rainbow capitalism. It is watered down Marxism. It is not a form of Marxism that is saying take to the streets and overthrow your government and overthrow the billionaires. Instead, it's saying more democracy, more government. And they love more government because that allows them to have control. That allows them to have influence. That allows them to keep their power and to form all of this revolutionary spirit into a pseudo non-revolutionary spirit, which is critical theory. So that coalition still kind of exists in wokeness today. And that's that's the important element of understanding like what this is that it's not just revolutionary leftist art or revolutionary leftist ideas in some other country. It's that as one third element. It's also the new people that believe in that, but it's also corporate power and corporations and the World Economic Forum and all of these people that know that if they can use this to keep genuine Marxism away, they can maintain their power and they can be the good guys as they continuously gain more power than a free market would give them, so that they can have this socialist, pseudo-capitalist super state that gives them ultimate power, ultimate wealth, and things like that. And that's kind of like, I guess, was where my critique was founded, was like, I totally agree with you that they're pushing this revolutionary art to destabilize regions, but they're also doing it to fund institutions, and that so that those institutions can be in their own power, kind of thing.
Yeah, because the stuff that they're exporting is stuff that they ultimately will benefit from. It's like an investment as well as an attack in a way. And what I was talking about wasn't necessarily me trying to figure out what their plan was, but rather looking at our culture in America and looking at how this kind of postmodern art, you know, affected the way that we basically our entire culture. It infected it like a disease and slowly ate away at it over time. And so, like, you know, when the thing that's really ironic about this is the piece that is sort of like the centerpiece of this conversation, like the fountain, which is the piece that people were talking about. I don't know if you know. Do you know about the fountain, Marcel Duchamp, and all of that? Are you aware of that?
It sounds super fucking familiar, but I can't picture it.
It's okay. It's in the thumbnail, but basically,
oh, is it like the toilet? Is that what you're talking about?
It's the toilet. It's called the fountain. Yes, it's the toilet. So the thing about that is, around this time, you had, just before this, we had like these art, what we call them the existentialist period, and was kind of a postmodern thing that was going on, where you had World War I, and you also had various revolutions, like the Bolshevik Revolution and things like of that nature. And so before that happened, you had a bunch of artists that were making, they basically came together and they said art has to have a political message in it, otherwise it's not true art. And the people who were the biggest at pushing it were generally people in elite positions, like the aristocratic class, right? You know, the people who had the money to invest in art pieces that said something, people who were politically connected, people who were interested in money laundering, people who were they own museums, that own galleries, the art critics. Like, these were like the snootiest of the snooty. And what happened was that there was a push to essentially say art that is beautiful is no longer art. It has to be something that says something. And of course, what it has to say, the things that we want it to say. So it has to be, making statements about how evil capitalism is and all this. And they'll use whatever to do that, right? And so you had this period where art was ugly on purpose, because they were trying to sell the messaging as the more important thing. It was they would sort of disguise it with language by saying things like, oh, we're just sort of re-envisioning what the human form could look like, and we're just deconstructing. There was a lot of deconstruction, there was a lot of subversion. And Marcel Duchamp, who was doing like interesting things with his art, where he was trying to draw animation. He has like a famous, I think it's him, he did this famous thing called Nude Descending a Staircase, and it looks like frames of animation, because around this time animation was very, very like cutting edge. And but then what he did was, he didn't like that. He hated this whole thing, because to him it was very elitist, which it was. And so he was taking the piss out of it. And so what he did was, he said, oh, I'm gonna grab a toilet, I'm gonna paint something on it, because he put some numbers on there, and then he put it in the corner of a gallery and just called it, fountain. And he thought that he was like basically, shit posting in real life. That was what it was. They were the real life shit posters of their time, the Dadaists. And it backfired. Basically, the class were like, these people were like, oh, this is genius. And they just went with it, because essentially you gave them ammunition that they were able to use. And so this Dadaist movement, go ahead.
I want to be clear, like you can still kind of do that, and it can still be
Yes,
good.
absolutely.
Like I think a good example is when Banksy sold one of his famous graffiti pieces, in painting form in a frame, and then as soon as the auction occurred, he it cut on and shredded the painting itself, and then became more valuable because of it. Like there are, you can actually shit post in your art in a way that actually does take the piss out of those institutions, and it can work. Though I'm not a huge fan of Banksy.
Yeah, me neither. But what I'm saying is that what started off as just a shit post actually propelled that into the next phase. And Marcel Duchamp later said that he was remorseful that he ever did that, because he doesn't like the way that essentially there was a massive divide between arts as a kind of political tool and institution of change, because that's what they saw it as. It's like a means of change, and art that is simply, not that it's simple per se, but art that is just beautiful to the average viewer.
Right. Well,
And
go ahead.
like you ever see there was a documentary, I think it was a documentary called Who the Fuck is Jackson Pollock? And it was about Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock, he would essentially spill paint on a canvas.
Yeah,
and
Jackson
with
Pollock
different colors.
was of his time, was those people that hang upside down and fucking spray paintings. It's all an attempt to recapture what Jackson Pollock was doing.
Yes. Anyway, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What I'm getting at though is what I think, in my view, is it happens when you take the beautiful and make it profane, either by dismissing it or poo-pooing it, Well, for example, some of the great fantasy artists like Frank Frazetta and the guys who would illustrate Robert E. Howard's Conan books, for example, or comic book artists, which I think that's extremely difficult to do well. Well, that was all just dismissed as what they call it illustration, which is another way of dismissing it. What's his name? Norman Rockwell would do these fantastic paintings, and none of it was worthy of being called art. And that's because Norman Rockwell's art was either not political or political in a way that they did not like. And it basically all came down to whether or not it had the correct leftist political messaging. And as time went on, that divide only grew more and more and more, to the point where, when I was in art school, we went on a field trip to the Chicago Art Museum, which we call the Art Institute of Chicago. It's a very, big museum. I mean, not quite as popular as the one in New York, but it's up there. Right, it's like the second biggest. And we go in there and you can see things of every era, the Baroque paintings that were massive murals, beautiful, beautifully done, but often the narratives were from the Bible. It was things like Christ carrying the cross and all that, but it didn't matter because they were beautiful. Or there'd be portraits of noblemen and priests and important figures of the medieval period. And then you go into the Impressionists, where things were they were basically trying to capture, the world as it was. It was definitely more progressive than those older paintings, which were very expensive to pay someone for, and only a few people would do it. And then you had, like I said, the guys like Van Gogh and Monet, and they were just painting whatever was out their window. And that was what was, what made the Impressionist period popular. But then you go to the contemporary section, and it's all this ugly shit. It's there was one, I swear to God, it was a black canvas with a date on it that was done in a slightly different black color. And it was and if you look the date up, it's the day that, some black person was killed by police or something, right? It was obviously was what I'm saying. It wasn't even pretending to be anything other than a political statement. I remember one piece that I still boggles my mind that it even exists in the Museum of Contemporary Art. Those people get a lot of money to have their stuff there, and I'm fairly certain that they get some government money as well. But there was one exhibit in there.
Money, okay, they're getting an NGO was created with a small investment, and then that NGO gets government money, and then that NGO gives them money.
Oh, yeah. So totally not government money, guys.
It's not government money. Okay?
Yeah, it's almost like NGOs are a oxymoron. But there was one piece, I can't even describe it. It was like the corner of the room, and there was a pile of hard candy. It was like little wrapper candies, different colors. And you were told that you can take one if you want to. So people could just take a candy. And my professor told us that there was a story behind this piece, because we were like, okay, what is this? And of course, it didn't even have a title. We didn't know what it was about. And my teacher told us the story. Oh, well, the person who made this piece, his lover was he was gay, and his lover had AIDS, and his lover was dying of AIDS, and he made this piece to resemble his lover's body. And as you take the pieces away, there's fewer and fewer candies. It's like the slow death of this guy from AIDS. And I was like, okay, so does that mean that this piece is going to be gone in a few days because people are taking the candy? And he's like, no, because every day they refill it with more candy. So the guy doesn't die? Like, even when you're trying to say something political, you don't say it? And then I was like thinking to myself, most of these pieces.
That famous banana.
Yeah, the banana stuck to the wall, or the giant rock. Most of these pieces, no one can actually own. And my professor said that was it was a big thing. It was like, well, the trick is to make something that no one can buy because they can't have it in their house. Like you couldn't own a pile of candy. I mean, unless you go buy a pile of candy and then convince everyone of the story. But and I was like, well, I feel like this is so far afield from what something should be, because I'd rather go downstairs and look at the Japanese, rice paper prints, because they're beautiful. Like, I'd rather look at something beautiful. And what I think it does is that, and this is where we're going to get into somewhat speculative territory, because you have to kind of be open to the possibility that there is a slippery slope. Like, I think there is, when it comes to what we experience, and if it's enough of it and it's over a long period of time. And I think that this has been going on for over 100 years. And I'm only talking about art, but there's lots of ways to do these little nudges. And what it does, in my opinion, is that over time, it demoralizes people because they don't see anything that's aspirational or beautiful. And you can see it in our architecture. You were talking about architecture. Now, when new apartment buildings go up, they don't look like they're made by machines, and I'm not just talking about like the giant complexes. I mean, like in Chicago, we have like very old buildings, like stone, like stone front buildings, like gray stone buildings that are like duplexes. And you can tell that they were crafted with human hands, and they have, and they're not churches or anything. They're just like apartments, but they're beautifully done. The old ones are like 100 years old, but the new buildings that are going up, it's just like something out of Minecraft. And I don't think that the people who built it are thinking, oh, I'm going to demoralize people. I think that it's almost like we've internalized this idea that utility trumps beauty. We reverse the hierarchy, right? And I think that like I said, I think it demoralizes people over time. So when I hear that USAID is funding Turquoise Mountain to teach people in the Middle East about, Marcel Duchamp's fountain, and like how important it was to postmodern art, it concerns me, because I think that we should be fighting that back home. We certainly should be exporting it to other countries. And so I think that if you demoralize people enough over a period of time, they're going to resent their home. You're gonna condition them to be oikophobic. And I think that it starts with things like this. So I don't disagree with you in terms of like all of the goals involved. I think that this attitude that could emerge from this may be unintentional. Maybe they don't know. But I do think that if you show somebody something ugly enough and you try to make them believe that it's actually beautiful, that is not going to go over well in the long run. So, and I think, it's happening in our video games now. I mean, and I'm glad that people are pushing back, but this is kind of like what I was trying to get at. I could see, and again, when you're looking at just this one instance, like USAID and Turquoise Mountain, and this, specific video clip of them showing off the fountain by Duchamp, makes me wonder, like, okay, but there's probably more organizations like USAID, way more places they're selling this to, way more different mediums that they're doing, and way more, profane, I would call it profane art, that they're trying to normalize in these other countries. And that's why I think it's destabilizing.
Yeah, so lot to unpack there, right?
Okay.
Let's first start with the art. I agree probably 99% of what you're saying in terms of the history of how contemporary art came to be. I think the important thing to stress there is that if art is required to have a message that is difficult, I think that's more the point to stress, right? Because all art has a message, all art has a political message, but as I laid out, I believe, right, from an objectivist perspective, in that it is value laden from the person that makes it, and especially when someone is pouring a ton of time into a piece, and you're going to see more of their values represented in the dedication to the piece that they're making and why they're making it, and how they see the world. What I would say is that the elite recognized that art that is married to the aesthetics, married to not just form and function, but to aesthetic beauty, is one that can be felt by anyone. And that is I think that is a threat to the kind of like institution of being able to control the messaging of art, right? If I make if I'm a talented artist let's just say I'm a talented painter, right? And I make a painting that isn't, overtly political in terms of what allies with, the art community, such that it is, right? There's almost an implicit threat to them and their power by doing so. And the reason there's almost an implicit threat to them and their power is that art is beautiful, as far as I'm concerned, insofar as that it allies with two things. One is positive propaganda, if you will, or positive values, and the other is reality. And when something is real as opposed to subversive to reality, then it is more easily understood by the individual, right? If I draw a painting,
that's because beauty is truth. That's right. Kind of what I'm. Like, even in things that are. No, I think that beauty is truth. Like for example, if you have like I don't know, like a beautiful painting of like a chimeric
landscape. Let's use the landscape.
Well, but it could be something fantastical, like some Leviathan or a monster. You can see, even if it's meant to be scary, there is a beauty to it because it's done in a way that takes into account aesthetics. Like that. So when I say beauty is truth, I don't just mean like the sensual, although that is also, obviously beauty and not like pornographic per se. But anyway, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, you're nerding out because we're in your domain and you're excited, and that's what a good conversation is, not a debate. I'm not gonna. If you want to be like, oh no, you get a big idea, like let it go, like let it free flow. Yeah. I'm ADHD. I can handle it. Right.
Okay.
So
all right.
What I'm saying is like, like a beautiful landscape, because I was noticing one of your commentators was like disagreeing with me. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that a beautiful landscape has a political message insofar as it's saying like, you ought to do this or you ought to do that, or if someone has like a motivation to try and sell you a political ideology or goal. What I'm saying is that artist has values about who they see themselves, how they see the world, and what they think is beautiful or what they think is destructive, right? Like, and because of that, those values are laden within the art. And I'm not saying that you can necessarily, as an individual, when you see it, always pick up one-to-one on it, because it's symbolic communication. It's not narrative communication. It's even harder to communicate ideas through symbols than it is to communicate ideas through words. And I think we all know that we fail to communicate our ideas appropriately through words all the time. I mean, anybody that's been in a serious relationship with another person, has had a wife or a long-term girlfriend or vice versa, husband or boyfriend, knows that like the other person's not understanding what you're trying to tell them, no matter how much you explain it to them, because you're not communicating exactly what it is that you're feeling, right? Like you're doing your best and yet you're still failing because words are an imperfect form of communication, but they're the best we have.
Yeah. Language is definitely limiting, and people. The thing about beauty in its like natural form is that we all, like you said, we all know it when we see it, and it can't. It can often like words wouldn't be able to clearly elucidate that, and so like, and this is another thing too, is that one of the things that I talk a lot about when I'm discussing, let's say what the left does, is it's all about controlling language. And so it makes it to where it's more difficult for us to express ourselves verbally, because if I say a word like gender, for example, that comes with a shit ton of baggage. But then it also sort of like shows you that there is a desire to control beauty itself, or like control like the avenues of all of this stuff that I was talking about before. It's top down, right? Like when I said, yeah, the people who are in the, teaching art in schools, that own the museums, that run the galleries, that are the art critics, it's all like this top-down thing where they're basically dictating to the plebs, like hopeful art students. No, son, what you have to do is you have to make art about this over here, this pet project that we like, this relevant thing that we're making. And so like not only do they control the language of speech and the written language, but they also control the language of like the visual and the audio and all of that. And people have to, all I'm asking is that people recognize it when they see it or hear it, so that you can, find a way to express yourself freely without these controls. And to your point about like every artist is expressing themselves, like their beliefs, that is 100% true. But again, there's a hierarchy. Some people they're doing better things and they're doing it better than others. And what these people want to do is they want to pretend like everything's the same, or in fact it's inverted, which is ultimately the goal, is to invert or bring the fringe towards the center and push the center out to the fringe. That's why they have terms like heteronormative, which basically just means normal, but they're trying to make it something different, something other.
Well,
so
heteronormativity exists because queer theory is ultimately gender abolitionist, right? So
yes.
There is a weird alliance. I just want to I know I'm on a tangent, but I'm going to go into it anyways. There's a weird alliance between, intersectional feminists and critical theorists in a lower level of understanding of queer theory, and actual queer theorists like David Halperin, or the kind of the intelligentsia, right? And so the thing to understand about queer theory, like the concept of heteronormativity, like why does that exist? David Halperin wrote, famously, I would say, if you're, understanding queer theory, I want to say it was 96, queerness is an identity without an essence. It is opposed to whatever is normal. It is opposed to what is the standard. This is why queerness has begun to throw out like gay white dudes that are conservative. They're no longer queer, and it's not. And you would say, well, isn't that a sexual?
Queerness itself doesn't really mean homosexual, though. It is an identity without an essence. It is essentially an unessential identity. Yes.
Right. It's heteronormativity is keeping a concept of gender and sexuality as opposed to a spirit that expresses itself with no form. And so like what it really is it's a destruction of a concept of gender, which is, so it contradicts with reality, and because it contradicts with reality, it is kind of an asymptote, if you will. It's a never-ending, never reachable goal, because you would have to destroy reality in order to truly get rid of it. But getting back to art, right?
It's okay.
Yeah, no, I do agree with the premise that we are exporting modern ideas and of art that are like, and what I would almost call anti.
Oh, I think you had it right the first time, because ultimately we are not USAID or the CIA or whatever you want to call it, they're not actually exporting art so much as what comes with that, like all the ideas that come with it. Like they couldn't give two shits whether or not a peasant in Afghanistan is going to like understand or appreciate Marcel Duchamp's fountain, What they want is for them to start thinking about things in this postmodern way, because it will erode. I think so. Or it will have that effect anyway if they internalize it, because like you are trying to, when you said they're exporting neoliberalism, I think of it like what my friend Carl calls it, the liberal world order, which is this idea that we want everybody to have the same values that we have. And this isn't necessarily what USAID is doing, but the people who hear about that and they're like, oh, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with showing these people in the Middle East, like, I don't know, our art history, like Western art history? And it's like, well, maybe they're okay the way they are, and we don't need to export, our sick culture to other countries.
So
because
this is why I said it's important to recognize the three kind of individuals within critical theory in the beginning and why they're still here, right? When we're talking about USAID, right, we are almost completely talking about CIA, World Economic Forum, individual corporate
globalists,
money, right? We are talking about the cathedral. Okay, they don't give two shits if you think postmodern or not. They don't give two shits what your philosophy or what your values are. They don't give two shits about art. They don't care about any of that. And that was kind of like my critique is like what they are doing with USAID specifically, right? Is that when you hear them talk, you remember during the Biden administration, everyone kept saying our democracy. This is a fight for democracy. Now, a lot of people pointed out, well, they don't value democracy, like change it with bureaucracy. But what you actually have to understand is that all of these intelligence community assets, NGOs that work with intelligence agencies, National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, Council on Foreign Relations, all of these all of these pseudo-private companies that are contractors, all of them, they have utilized the same term called a whole of society approach. Okay, a whole of society. It's a buzzword that they use constantly. Well, in order to do this, we need a whole of society approach. And so what that means is that in order to make a nation state a client state of the U.S., right, like the Ukraine currently is. Ukraine is a client state of the U.S. or the Western kind of like global kind of empire, if you will, right?
Yeah,
is that
the welfare queen of the U.S.
They recognize that, when you look at the history of what the CIA did, we used to just assassinate people and like foment coups and, send in the Green Berets, train a bunch of rebels, and then those rebels will take over like a communist somewhere, right? And this is why the communists understand USAID so much better than everybody else, is because it's been used against them for 60 years. And like right-wing populists and like other people, this is kind of like a new thing. But this apparatus was built, at the very beginning of the Cold War and has been going on since then. And so what they're doing is they're not funding art programs that are like revolutionary art because they give a fuck about any of that or because they want to change their opinions on art. They're funding it because the people that do that are signifying that they're on our side and they're in competition with other universities, so what USA does is it goes in and it attempts to fund media organizations. It attempts to fund educations of higher learning, like, universities, colleges, trade schools, things like that.
Yeah.
They go in and they fund specific political campaigns and groups and parties, right? They go in and they fund activist organizations. And what they're doing is USAID is always saying, what is in the best interest of the United States global hegemonic power, right? And so they will fund, and this is assuming there isn't money laundering going on and assuming that some of this money, all of this money is actually going to these institutions, right? This is like...
Yeah, which I doubt. It's very unlikely.
Right. But just on its face, right? So what they're doing is they're funding these programs because those are the universities that are signaling, we're with you. When they do woke shit, they're like, yes, we are a part of this culture. We're on your side in this. So the culture war is kind of like one step below in terms of the political power of neoliberalism. And so that's why these things get funded. the consequence is many of what you've explained, right? The consequence is, the destruction of the culture, the destruction of beauty and an understanding and a marriage of beauty, the destruction of, the individual elements that a culture has, ingraining a postmodern kind of like value-less society that, everything needs to be multicultural and, what is the term for, no values are better than other values. I can't think of the term right now.
I know what you're saying. Well, you could call it cultural relativism or something, but
moral
I know
relativism. That's the word.
Moral relativism. Yeah,
right. It breeds moral relativism, right? It's
Absolutely.
breeding all of these things as a consequence. But what I guess what I was trying to critique, and it's Twitter, so it's a terrible place to do it, is like, that's a like a down order effect of what's occurring. Right, like what's occurring is that they're purchasing institutions so that they can make sure that right-wing populists don't get elected, and they can make sure that communist revolutions don't occur. So they're ironically they are pushing neo-Marxism to ensure that Marxism doesn't take root, and it's a tale as old as time that rich corporate individuals have recognized that Marxism is a genuine threat to them, and neo-Marxist postmodern critical theory wokeness is degrades society and is a threat to the people and is a threat to the stability of a nation, but it's not a threat to large corporate power.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. And like I said, initially I was like, I think we're just talking past each other because I'm looking at what happened, empires rise and fall. There's not much. I mean, it's good that we know what's going on. I think that we're living in, for me, it's an optimistic time because we're getting more and more transparency, even if, for example, the current administration they're probably definitely not going to be able to undo everything that's happened, because most of what's happened started happening before any of us were born. But
I'm an anarchist, so I think it's baked into the system.
I look at it from more of a, I guess you could say the perspective of someone who just, really wants art to continue to thrive in an organic way. And I think that a lot of this is very like astroturfed, and it's pushed down on us, and it's sort of, dictated at us. But I think that more and more independent cultural actors are coming out of this, which is why I'm more or less optimistic about it. But I still like to point out, this stuff that you guys were taught was like supposedly good art is not. I did get a super a Rumble rant. I'm sorry for people watching on Rumble. Thank you for those of you guys who are sending Rumble rants. Really appreciate it. NovaFan21 gave us $1 and says, one thing for sure, there is a fundamental difference in purpose and communication of the art when Sailor Moon has a gay couple and Blue's Clues teaches kids about trans people. I mean, I knew about that.
I had forgotten about the Blue's Clues thing.
Remember they were funding Sesame Street in like, I don't know, like some African country or Middle Eastern country. And why is that? Or at least maybe not why, because you just said that, but like what could be the downstream effects of that? I also want to respond to something Lat QCD said in the chat. He said that a Bob Ross landscape doesn't really have a central message behind it any more than I'm not going to even try to pronounce that landscape, but they both convey different emotions that they try to communicate. Yeah, well, I think Bob Ross as a good example of somebody who doesn't paint any subjects, but mostly just landscapes. I think that what he is saying, it's not political, obviously. But when I say there is something being said in art, I never said it was an ought that is being said or something political, but rather I think Bob Ross is someone who, I don't know if he was Christian, but he certainly loved nature. Like that was the basis of everything. He never painted like, buildings or animals or portraits. It was always landscapes. Maybe that was just nature of a show. Yeah, he would throw happy little birds or buffalo. I remember one where he did little buffalo and like some buffalo babies, and they were like sipping at the pond. But Bob Ross was in love with the world, and I think that was what people liked about his paintings, liked about his show. And he was another one that the art community, the elitists, was shit on. They say, "Oh, that's the kind of thing you'd see in a dentist's office." And it's like, so what? I want to look at it. What do you want me to look at? Like somebody tearing off their own face because, like, I don't know, like they're saying something about rape culture in, like, South Venezuela or something, like, yeah. So
I think Bob Ross is a good example of explaining what I mean, because I feel like maybe I'm improperly communicating it. There's a difference between intention here, right? I think what maybe people are misunderstanding about what I'm saying, or I'm not properly communicating, is when I say that all art has these values laden in them. I'm not saying that Bob Ross is it's obvious that he's not intending a political message with his form of art, right? But what I'm saying is that his values as a person, as he sees the world, as he sees himself, and as he sees everything, is a part of what informs both his ability, but also what he does when he puts the brush on canvas. And so that's kind of what I'm saying. And so, like, I agree that, like, not every piece of art is, has this intent message to say, you ought believe this, as you said, right? Like, or you ought think this, or this is what it ought be. But there are things that are communicated and conveyed by Bob Ross. As you pointed out, you were like, I don't know if he's Christian or not. Bob Ross was absolutely Christian. He often ended his shows with God bless. That was one of the ways that he would end his shows. He'd tell God bless God bless everybody, right? But he wasn't preaching Christianity or anything. I think more of what Bob Ross is communicating in his art, the medium of his art is not his painting. The medium of his art is the process and the show that he did. If Bob Ross never put on a television program, I don't think most people would know who Bob Ross is, and I don't think you would look at a Bob Ross painting quite the same way. I think what makes you look at a Bob Ross painting a certain way is the calm demeanor and the voice of Bob Ross. And one of the things that his art shows mistakes, and that mistakes are okay, because mistakes can be covered up by other things. And that if you continuously have an end goal and an end vision that is beauty, life has, he called them all the time, happy little accidents, right? Like, that's really what Bob Ross communicated with his art. And that's what you can see in his art, is that life has happy little accidents, and those things can be turned into something greater so long as you stay towards a unifying message, a unifying goal, and you keep your eye on the prize, and you do so calmly, and you don't let terrible things break you apart and turn you into a bad person. You just keep on the road, and you keep on the path, and you keep learning, and you keep growing. And, like, that's what makes Bob Ross so beautiful. That's what is conveyed when you know who he is and you see a Bob Ross painting. You're right. It is just something you'd see in a dentist's office. It is just a typical landscape with large brush strokes. You know what I mean? That isn't particular. That doesn't take, like, an insane amount of skill, right? But it was the openness to teach other people how to do this. That anybody can do this, and that anybody can have happy little accidents and turn them into something greater. That is kind of like what he's actually conveying, and those are the values that are represented in that art. Because that's who he was. Many of other artists might fuck up somewhere and go, oh, this is trash, let me throw it over. I got to start again. I made a mistake. But he keeps those mistakes like a crack in the Liberty Bell. And that's part of the art. It's in and of itself. And it's communicated in the art. And you can see it. Yeah. If you see a Bob Ross painting, you can see something and be like, was that supposed to be there? Maybe not. I can't quite tell. And it's like, no, it fucking wasn't. He made a mistake. And it's like he went with it. He rolled with it. There are a lot of values that get communicated in art that are unspoken and often unintended.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, I don't want to go too much on Bob Ross, but I think that the reason why, so somebody did say, Master Goa said something. I want to read your comment in a second. I think that Bob Ross was someone who saw the natural beauty of the world in all of its glory, which is why he did these paintings. And yes, it was part of the process. He was also trying to encourage people to do as he does. So if you do something you love, and you roll with it, as you say, he just made it work. And he encouraged people not to, essentially worry too much about making mistakes, which is why he just let them go, or even found a way to incorporate them into the into his work. And so he was, like, in that way, he was a positive force. But you could tell based on, again, the way he did things. He was someone who saw the natural beauty of the world, and maybe for him it was spiritual, which I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
But like, it didn't matter. It was just the way that it was expressed. So yes, I think that is, I think that's true. And obviously his show, but he also had classes and stuff too. And he wanted other people. It was like a way
but you get what I'm saying,
him,
right? Like,
I
you get
do.
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm saying
absolutely.
the
I get
value
what you're
is
saying.
in the art, right?
Yeah,
Like, I don't
it is,
mean
of course.
it's not an intentional political message.
No,
it's just,
no.
but it's present.
A message. Yeah, no. A message that is just political is actually, to me, it's low on the totem pole in terms of my priorities. Like, you know what? I'll come back to this in a second, but all I will say is that I think that he wanted his audience to see the world the way that he sees the world, and that was the way that he showed them. So Master Goa gave us $5. Thank you, Master Goa, and says culture war is literally just the social engineers clashing with the existing normal. If social engineers win, society moves further left / globalist, corporatist, whatever. Yeah. Well, ultimately it is. It's people, whatever their intentions are, because that's going to be different depending on who you talk to. There is essentially a top-down force trying to alter, as Larry Fink said, alter behaviors or force behaviors, essentially alter our value system, invert it, subvert it, whatever, demoralize us, make us, weaker so that we're more likely to submit. And then there are people who, they're going to resist. They want to create their own things. They want to love the world as it is. They want to, build out the garden from, after the fall, whatever you want to call it. And I think that that's where the tension is at, obviously. And again, you can look at what's happening now in the gaming industry. Where I think that the gaming industry is a good thing to look at, because Hollywood is falling apart. It's like dying. Okay, like we're watching it literally burned not that long ago, but it is as an institution. People are tuning out. Like, they're not getting their media from Hollywood anymore. They're getting it from individual people making their own work online or whatever. And so, like, the film industry is at an all-time low, from what I can tell. And the same thing with the music industry. Like, most people are finding their music on Spotify from like little people. They're getting their news from like, podcasters and like normal people on X or whatever. Like, none of the institutions from the cathedral are where people are going. And what the last bastion, I guess, is the gaming industry, because video games, like it or not, they are the largest entertainment industry ever, and it's not even close compared to every other entertainment we have. Even if you put them all together, it doesn't beat the video game industry. And what's happening is, like, the large, studios, the large development companies, they're trying to turn video games into the new Hollywood. They're doing award shows. They're trying to construct celebrities. And obviously the studios like Warner Brothers, they're trying to get involved in that. They want in on that, because they used to have essentially like these studios in Hollywood. They almost had a monopoly on all of our entertainment, and now they're trying to move in on that. But of course, they're bringing all of their bullshit baggage with them, which includes their way of seeing the world, their sort of ideas, and they want to force them in there. And we are, as gamers, and this is basically most people play games at this point, even if some are casual, it doesn't matter. I think that most of us are doing that. You'd be surprised at who plays video games at your job. And a lot of us we know what's going on. We know that you can see this by the sales numbers. Look at how, I think the last thing that was a giant failure might have been Avowed or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 or whatever the big
Kingdom
thing
Come
was.
Deliverance 2
right?
did okay, but Avowed's been pretty bad.
Avowed's dropped off, right? And yet the Eastern developers are doing really well, right? Marvel Rivals is still massive.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that because I think it leans back more into, to my perspective here, right?
Go ahead.
Which is that, like, this is kind of, you're seeing the Eastern market succeed for one reason, and that's because they are aligning themselves with reality. right?
Yeah.
Like that is why the Eastern market is doing well. The Eastern market, like Marvel Rivals, right, has a horrible chatbot. You can't say anything bad about Chinese, right? You can't say, and nobody cares. And you know why nobody cares? Because
You
the
can't.
game
You
itself,
can't say like. You can't even say Taiwan. You know. So
right.
yeah.
Like there, but nobody cares because it's aligned with reality. And this is kind of what I mean when I talk about good art, or and then what I talk about anti-art. When anti-art is is using a message to push something that is against reality, right? Now, obviously, ugly people exist. Okay, I'm not saying that ugly people are anti-reality, but what I'm saying is that ugly people as heroic figures, as role models, is anti-reality. Like it or not, people don't like ugly people. People don't value ugly people. People value beauty. People value, especially when you're talking about a video game, which more often than not is a form of escapism, right? It's a means of getting away from the mundane into getting into the heroic, right? It is
aspirational.
Right, exactly. That's a perfect term to describe it. And so, you know, you look at like Black Myth Wukong, you look at Marvel Rivals, as you stated. You look at, oh God, I'm trying to think of, recent games that have come out of the Eastern market.
Monster Hunter Wilds is doing really well,
right?
Despite the fact that the PC
breaking people's computers.
Yeah. But but again, it's just like you said, at the end of the day, like it's doing the art well. And, like with, I made videos about the art direction of Marvel Rivals, explaining that this is the reason why the game is successful. And I get that there are people that are, angry about it because, it's a Chinese company, the CCP is involved, etc. I get all that, dudes. But like, if the Western market doesn't compete, then it doesn't matter. Like, you can hate China all you want. They're doing better and we're not. So why aren't we doing better? We could. Like, Marvel is literally an American product, and China's doing it better than us. Like, what did Warner Brothers give us? Suicide Squad killed the Justice League? Like, we
can do another comparison if we don't, if we're like super anti-China over here. Like, look at Grinding Gears games versus Blizzard in terms of Diablo 4 and Path of Exile 2. Right? When you see Path of Exile 2, Path of Exile 2 is not a fucking easy game to get into, right? Their talent tree system is great if you're a nerd, and if you're not a fucking nerd, it is daunting to look at. Their gear, I mean, it's
You're talking about Path of Exile?
What's that?
You're talking about Path of Exile? Are you talking about Path of Exile 2?
Yeah, Path of Exile 2. Yeah. But if you
because I just want to say I tried to play Diablo 3 and I was pissed off at how simple it was. And I don't know if 4 is like simpler than that, but I wanted something more in depth, like what you're suggesting Path of Exile is. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would say Diablo 4 is a veneer of being more complicated while actually not being more complicated. So it gives you this giant like tree, but basically the tree is, there's like almost essentially one correct answer for every build, and you just look it up and then you fill it out. So it's like, it's not actually like I mean, like, sure, if you're a fire mage, you pick up some different nodes or whatever. Whereas Path of Exile 2 is a giant shared talent tree that every class shares with like 1,000, with like 500 nodes or more. I couldn't tell you how many are on it. I'd have to count them, but it's an insane amount. And you just start in a different place. But setting that aside, what I mean is the art direction, right? The Path of Exile 2, you listen to their developers and they're like, when they talk, they understand their community, and what they're doing is they're doing everything they can to align with what it is that their community is doing. Like, one example is, he talked about the cash shop, right? So Path of Exile 2 is a free-to-play game, but it's in beta right now, so you have to spend $30 in their store or whatever in order to get into the beta. But once it releases fully, the 2, it will be free-to-play, and Path of Exile 1 is free-to-play, right? So you listen to the developer talk about it, and he goes, yeah, well, one of the things that, we say is, if I find out that someone at our company states, well, we can just put this in the cash shop, they're fired immediately. Like if I find out that that they want to fix something or do something interesting in the game, but they want to gatekeep it behind some price or something, I'm immediately getting rid of that person. And or another thing that he had said is, he talked about, like, when we were developing the game, there are certain things that set a new industry standard. And he had talked about another game, and he had said that they had a roll dodge mechanic in a ARPG. And he was like, well, that's a new standard, so that just has to be in the game. So he's they're looking at their audience and what it is that their audience desires, what the market expects, and then saying, okay, I have to provide this to the market. And then in their art style is brutal. I mean, Diablo, they've always wanted, they always thought of themselves as a successor to Diablo 2, right? And they said, Diablo 4 is like, it's designed to appeal to everybody, so it appeals to no one, because it's like this, it's supposed to be grim dark, and it's all and it's watered down. Whereas in Path of Exile, like there are scenes where, like, you go into temples and, like, bodies get sliced in half, by a laser, and it shows, like, the inside of the flesh, and that's like part of, like, ritualistic shit. It's like, it's dark, it's gory, it's terrifying, but that's what it is supposed to be. That's what the audience wants. And so there is something about this ideology that infects institutions, where everything suffers because the ideology becomes the forefront. It becomes the most important thing. We saw this overwhelmingly with, like, Star Wars and Kathleen Kennedy's crew, right? Like, the Force was female was more important than telling a story. I remember when they came out with the New Order, or whatever. I can't remember the.
Is the game you're thinking about with the roll mechanic? Is that No Rest for the Wicked? Because I think that might
it was.
Be. Okay,
it's a different one. No Rest for the Wicked.
Okay, doesn't matter. Yeah,
No Rest for
I believe that
one was in development at the same time as PoE 2. It was. I want to say it starts with a P, but I can't remember the name of it. But regardless, what I mean to say is,
I'm sorry. You're
see
talking about
this
Star Wars and go ahead.
I just mean to say that you see this in every instance where large corporate institutions are, there's this interplay, right, with, like, DEI, ESG, things like that, these ideologies, which is really, I think, the real beginning. A big part of the problem with this is women entering the workforce, and so the workforce created jobs for women. But I don't want to get too misogynistic, but that's just
no, you're welcome to do that here. I think everyone's going to co-sign on that. No, I think it, but ultimately though, okay, I'm just
saying that ideology starts to take
there have
root,
always been
there
have always been women in the industry, but before the Me Too movement, which is when I think things really started to change, the women who were there because they wanted to do that work. So they were there for that reason. And now you have people who see industries like the video game industry, which used to be something that you could shame and say, oh, that's for nerds or whatever. But now that it's become mainstream, it's become extremely profitable, and there's a lot more of a lower a bar to get in, and it's so popular. There's so much status associated with it. You will have people who are essentially tourists, and most of them will be women, but not exclusively, because there's plenty of dudes that do that too. And they just want to get in, and they will obviously they don't know what they're doing. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen someone who has an important, position in a development, on a dev team that has no idea what they're working on, or they only know a little,
That's
Avowed is Avowed. Halo, watch. Halo is cooked. What else? Well, I cover this
Hold
stuff
on,
all the
you're
time.
not going to spend money on the new Women's History Month skin in Halo? Like, what are you talking about? You don't want to.
No,
Rosie
you're not
the
wrong,
Riveter,
man.
Halo
we
skin?
have to be fearless in saying that it is something that happened when women entered the industry en masse. When it was something that men, and it still is something that mostly men do, women thought it was beneath them, or at least like the ones that are now involved. Now that they are getting involved, they're turning it into something for them, which is why, like, the games are shit, except for the ones that are made by dedicated dev teams that want to make something good.
So I have there's a couple.
I don't think that's misogynistic to say.
No, I want to expand upon this because we're in a free
Okay.
form kind of conversation. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
So I have developed a sociological lens, or theory, if you will, personally. It's kind of my baby. I keep telling people I'm going to make a video about it. But I kind of keep letting the perfect be the enemy of the good because it's probably like my life's work kind of thing. And so what I would say, so you have critical theory, that's a sociological lens, right? Or, symbolic interactionalism, or,
Sure.
Durkheimian functionalism, or, more modern, structural functionalism or dramaturgy. Those are kind of the big ones, right? And C. Wright Mills kind of had a famous piece where he talked about the sociological imagination, which is, the desire or the need to combine lenses and look at things from different lenses. Well, I have my own lens, which I call cultural cost theory, right? And the way that I view social institutions through this kind of sociological lens that I have created is very much inspired by Austrian economic theory, in that every institution has a certain cost to it towards outsiders. Okay. And you could describe this, feminists might call this the glass ceiling, if you will, right? There is a certain, anytime someone represents themselves differently than the people within the institution, be they from a different region, speak a different language as their first language, be a different gender, be, whatever it is, right? There are cultural differences that are subtle, right? The way you dress, the way you talk, the way you act, the way you engage with people. All these little things are seen, and most people have an in-group preference, right? Most people prefer things that they understand as opposed to things that they don't understand. And so a healthy institution in a competitive market has to kind of figure out to what level they have their own glass ceiling, to what level they gatekeep their own institution. An institution that gatekeeps everyone that's different is one that is doomed to failure, because time changes, values change, people change. And just because what you did was successful in the past doesn't mean that continuing that and going on in the future will continue to succeed. And yet an institution where the cultural cost is too low, or even a negative cultural cost, which is what we're seeing in gaming places where they're doing everything they can to hire women, right? It's too subject to change, and it loses its vision, and it loses its ability to maintain its own structure and figure out what did well and what didn't do well. So in a sense, every institution is kind of like the Tao Ching, the yin and the yang, right? You have to invite chaos so that you can change with the times, so that you can update, so that you can continuously grow in competition. But you also have to have an order and a structure. And so what you're describing when you talk about women that used to be in the gaming space is, you're absolutely right that they face some level of sexism and discrimination, and that they weren't treated the same way as like dude bros that played games. And that was a good thing. And the reason it was a good thing is because those institutions gatekept their own community. And if there were people that were passionate or great artists or amazing at what they do that proved themselves, they were then let in because what they brought to the table was more than what that institution was willing to gatekeep, right? That institution is like, look, we don't want these types of people around, even if they're not saying it, but you're such a good artist and you're so passionate. I don't care what you are. I don't care that you're a little different or that you have different ideas, because what you bring to the table is amazing, right? And so it was okay that those people were in those institutions at that time. But once the culture pushes and forces things into these spaces, you get what you're seeing now, which is a destruction, because they have no ability to maintain order. None of these companies that are forcing DEI, that are like, after Gamergate came out on the side of like Kotaku and IGN and, I'm trying to remember all of the big players, but it's been a while since Gamergate occurred. But you get what I'm saying. None of the people that were on the wrong side of Gamergate, as far as I'm concerned, have been able to maintain, like they're living off of the carcass of former glory. None of them are making good games. They occasionally make good games, but over large, they're destroying themselves because they've lost a connection with their target audience. They've lost a connection to achieving great new things. And that's why we're seeing indie developers, double A
Mhm.
studios like Larian Studios. Larian's woke as fuck, right? Larian is
They
is
sure
super
are.
woke. But nobody
Yes, they
gives
are.
a fuck because the wokeness isn't at a point where it overrides the narrative or overrides their desire to make a good game or their connection to their people. They made a good game
Yeah.
despite it being woke.
Yeah, well, it could have been, because just real quick, it could have been even better, because I understand that there was a build before the game came out that had like different customization. It was like full customization with sliders and everything, and they got rid of that. I don't know if you noticed, but you have Baldur's Gate 3, because I saw that you streamed it. I've streamed it too. The customization there is some, but it's not the same. And it's definitely like more in line with a kind of more woke approach, especially with the relationship options.
I think
and all
that's
that.
bullshit. Because I heard a lot of people talk about that, and I think Larian Studios knew that so Larian Studios built the game specifically from the very beginning to make it very easy to mod. And I think they were like, we've spent way too much time on this and way too many things on this. And so I think a lot of things were cut
I think I saw
because they knew that modders were gonna do all kinds of shit.
I believe there was footage of the sliders, like for things like your height and your how muscular you are, and if you're making a female character, what your measurements are going to be. But they got rid of most of that. I don't think there's much of that left. But although the modding community has done a lot to change it,
right?
But look, I think that we're basically like not really in disagreement. I'm just saying that yes, Baldur's Gate is good despite.
That's why I said in spite of it, of the wokeness. Because,
in spite of it, because they did everything else well. And if you don't like, you can just kill all of the other characters if you don't like them. Like you can kill anybody you want. So it's not like they made them. They didn't make it to where you have to be with these people. Unlike I believe Dragon Age: The Veilguard, where you kind of have to be with these annoying characters.
Right. What I meant to say is that I was utilizing it as an example of cultural cost theory, right? Which is that wokeness incurs a cost on an institution. But
yes, for sure.
So many other values were present to such a degree that it didn't matter. Like it was a net. The wokeness is, I would say, is almost certainly a net negative to anyone producing a game right now. But Larian Studios was able to develop a great game because people have values. Values subjective, and values are in different orders. And what you're seeing in places like Blizzard or in Lucasfilm is that the number one value is their woke shit. And you can tell in Larian, that's like number 7 or 8 for them.
Yeah, it's down the list. I will say, here's a good example of what like the art that's being pushed on people versus the reality, or like the super chat that I got where they said, what is it, like the social engineers clashing with the normal. So the top down social engineering and the normal people at the bottom. Here's a good example. Good that you mentioned Baldur's Gate 3. I remember there was a study done that one of the guys at Larian Studios, maybe the head guy at Larian Studios, said that
everyone makes white male warriors. Yeah. Is that what
yes,
you're talking about?
He's like, he was disappointed at the fact that everybody who plays the game made a white male fighter or a white male warrior class type. And he was like, oh, all of, you could have had Vitiligo. Why didn't you give your character Vitiligo, right? And no, they didn't do that. I mean, I'm not that guy. I made a Dragonborn monk, but like that. And I'm like, well, yeah. Like, why is this a problem? Like maybe he could have just done, I think that in Cyberpunk 2077, more people played male V because they wanted to just play a dude. And they wanted they wanted to bang Pan Am or whatever. And I
aside, but I can't play I can't play evil male characters because I feel like I'm them.
Yeah,
and then I feel bad.
One.
Every time I do an evil playthrough, it's always a female because I'm like more disassociated with the character.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Most people don't play evil characters if they like just the data. I mean,
I play the fuck out of evil characters. I just usually do it as a female.
Oh, fair. Wow. Now, speaking of misogynistic, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay.
Well, or for example, the voice actress for Mass Effect, right? Like the female voice actress,
female
Yeah,
Shepherd.
the female Shepherd. I mean,
Okay.
she blows. I mean, she's one of the greatest voice actresses in gaming, as far as I'm concerned, right? I mean, so like, if I'm playing a Mass Effect run again or something, it's almost always a female Shepherd because their voice actress is just so much better.
The immersion is better too when it's a female character, right? That's evil.
Maybe. But yeah, so I want to talk about the women in the gaming and stuff like that too, because I made a claim, which is that the market created jobs for women, and I want to expound upon what I mean by that. So historically, obviously, there have been a lot of consequences of women entering the workforce, right? Obviously, we can talk about family structure, we can talk about modern relationships, we can talk about the satanic panic, which is almost certainly caused by women entering the workforce. But one of the things that I think is kind of not talked about enough when women entered the workforce is that women are obviously different, right? They have different values. They engage differently. One of the things that women do is, lean towards, obviously, for anybody fucking watching, just in case I have to say this, when I'm saying generalizations, I'm talking about fucking standard distributions. When I say women do this, I don't mean all fucking women. Don't come at me with hashtag not all. I just mean that they tend towards one domain or they tend towards one behavior as opposed to the other. And that this creates great differences when you look at the extremes. Okay, so saying all that, right? Women have a need for networking. They have a need for meaningful social relationships in their day-to-day lives. And one of the things that has occurred that I think has really bogged down business and progress in America, and in a lot of these places, especially places where it is a hyper-masculine, very autistic place. And what I mean by that is gaming and the tech industry, right? Places that are predominantly fucking socially awkward dudes that code a lot, right? And then all of a sudden we put a bunch of women in here. And what I hear overwhelmingly, because I have a very libertarian audience from a lot, so I know a lot of people that work in the tech industry, is that like 2 or 3, sometimes even half of their day is meetings about relationships, meetings about like office behavior, meetings about like micromanaged tasks, like I need Jira boards or t-shirts about the tasks that you're going to do, etc. Like sometimes 2/3 to half of their day is talking to women in the tech industry that have like management social relations jobs that are telling them how they should do their job instead of them just doing their fucking job. And it's like when the labor market is full of women, the market is going to find jobs for women just as much as the market
Middle
demands
management,
jobs.
human resources,
Throughout every institution, but especially in those places, we have seen administrative bloat of HR, bloat of all of these places, and we have bogged down our economy by paying women to do jobs that mostly just benefit women. Like they're necessary because women are in the workforce. But when it's a bunch of dudes, you like if you were a gaming studio and you only hired guys and you only hired, let's say, right-wing autistic dudes, you'd need like 2 people for every 1,000 in human resources. Like your job would be to file paperwork, and interpersonal relations would be like, hey, you come in here, leave him the fuck alone. All right. And they go, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. You have your cubicle. You have your cubicle. Both of you shut the fuck up. Get back to work. That would be the whole, and then the human resources would be done. Right. But when you have women in the workforce, you can't bring in a girl and go, hey, leave Cindy the fuck alone. Get it? And then, well, no, shut the fuck up and go do your job and go get in your cubicle and stop talking to her. Y'all are a problem. Get away. You could never do that with a workforce full of women, right? And so that's kind of what I'm talking about in a lot of these, like in the modern gaming space and tech industry. And the slowdown has been, we have slowed down progress to a crawl because a business only has so much money. And in terms of their payroll department, like they're spending like tons and tons of unnecessary money on jobs that don't need to exist, and then their staff are spending tons and tons of their productivity with these people that don't need to exist being unproductive.
Yep. Sounds like they need a Department of Corporate Efficiency. I mean, I no, but like, well, those videos of there were for a while there were all these women that were making these TikTok videos, a day in the life working at X company, and it's just them like eating avocado toast and like going to the
Answering
cafe
emails.
and maybe answering an email, going to a meeting once in a while, but a lot of it is just leisure time. And I mean, I don't want
Those are
this to go too
deceptive.
long but
Those are super
I'm
deceptive.
sure that's more
Well,
of
actually,
like
there's a secret to that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a secret that most people don't know about that. Most of those videos that went out like that were actually marketing at the companies themselves because they were trying to sell. They were trying, like, it was a form of trying to get people to come to work for them. And that's not actually how their day-to-day job actually is, but that they glamorized it as a form of marketing to try and get people to go into those jobs. But you're not wrong in saying that, like, that is a symptom, but it is certainly overblown because of that.
Yeah, sure. No, I get that the reason to do that is to make it look like a really appealing place to work. And in a way, women like to flex on other women, say, look at the job that I have, look at the status that I have. But yeah, I mean, I think that it is a problem. And I don't want to I should wrap this up pretty soon, but first of all, thank you for
I'm just along for the ride
coming. It's cool. Yeah, thanks for coming on and talking about this. I feel like if I start, we're gonna get into another topic, so I'm gonna leave it there. But do you have any final thoughts about this? I don't think that we disagree on anything. Like I just had I was looking at it from this whole thing about USAID and like exporting like profane art. I was looking at it from a very specific focus that I was concerned with, the ethics of beauty or the morality of aesthetics. And I think that there is something to it, that we should be treasuring the highest forms of art, and we are intentionally being told not to, and it comes out in different ways. So if people are wondering why is everything so ugly, I think it's by design, and it's designed to demoralize. And I think that but I think that people recognize this, and we are seeing more and more people creating beautiful art, even if it comes from China. I mean, like, if that's where it has to come from, that's where it has to come from. I do, but in case you guys are new and you don't know what I do on this channel, I talk a lot about culture here. I have a news show tomorrow with John, the problematic white guy. We're going to be talking about some news. I think there was like this story supposedly that like BlackRock is going to back off of DEI, and we're going to basically explain to you, well, that's not going to happen. They're just going to shift gears, and Larry Fink's not changing his plan overnight just because Trump got elected. But we will be talking about that tomorrow. I also do game streams. Every month I have a different theme. This month is multiplayer March, so I play multiplayer games. Most of some games I'd never tried before. Like I just did Left 4 Dead 2 this Thursday. Never played it before. It was a blast. And I think next week I got a couple of interesting games that I'm going to be playing. And I also occasionally try to do interviews with people. So I want to thank Fabian Liberty for coming on the show today. Fabian, do you have any final words, and tell people where they can reach you or find you? I also put your links in the description, by the way.
Yeah, I'm. You can just Google Fabian Liberty. You'll find me. I'm on YouTube. I'm not on Twitch anymore. That's where I started. But I saw the writing on the wall of what was happening at Twitch before a lot of other people. Well, the thing is, I do a lot of debates. I wouldn't say it's like it's a significant portion of the content that I do. If you are banned off of Twitch, no one on Twitch can have you on their stream, even if you debate them. So basically, if I were to get banned off of Twitch, I wouldn't be able to debate anybody that is a Twitch streamer, which would just would really hurt my channel. And I was like, fuck that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to go on Rumble. Rumble still has a lot of issues and discoverability problems and things like that. So primarily I'm on YouTube right now. But yeah, just Google me. And I'm an anarcho-capitalist, which is kind of like the final boss of libertarianism. You can find us doing reaction videos and debates and things like that. I love conversations like these, though. These are my favorite. This is my favorite form of content to do.
I like talking culture too.
It's the hardest to schedule, right? Because you piss somebody off and then all of a sudden Twitter's like, you get them, you get that. So it's easy to get a debate. Obviously, it's incredibly easy to just do reactions and, talk and, plan things by yourself. But I love things like these. So, to you, Brian, my DMs are always open. So
all right.
If you want a libertarian perspective on anything or to talk on things in the future about culture, I hope I'm entertaining or at the least informative.
Yeah, for sure. I will like I said, I have libertarian values as well. I think we're basically the same, except that your morality comes from objectivism and mine comes from this guy. But it's I don't think that much different. So
I would say my morality is more kind of like Nietzsche's.
Aristotelian? No, not Aristotle. Nietzsche.
No, I would say like when Nietzsche wrote Thus Spake Zarathustra, the three metamorphoses, right? The religion and social structures and monarchy, the load-bearing beast that eventually becomes the lion that slays the dragon of thou shalt. And then we all kind of have to be a child that discovers our own morality. I think my experience has been very similar to that, where, I'm mostly objectivist, but obviously I'm an anarcho-capitalist. And then there are times where, I act more as a virtue ethicist. I'm kind of my own mixture of random bullshit. But I really appreciate you having me on, especially as wordy as I am.
Thank you.
It was an interesting conversation.
It's cool. I work with women. I get it. But there are links to Fabian Liberty stuff that I put your Linktree link in the description. So if you want to know where you can follow him, just go to the description of this video and check it out. All right. Thanks, guys, so much for coming on the show. Yes, you'll see it right there. Thanks, guys, for coming on the show. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment letting me know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show today. And please share this video, because sharing is caring. My name is Brian, and this has been Fabian Liberty. Thank you guys so much for coming on to talk with us about basically everything going on with our culture and the rot and USAID and libertarianism and feminism, etc. See you guys in the next one. Long live Vivian.
All the things he said to my chat, and I'll see you later, brother.
I'll see you, man. Have a good one.
All right, hold on. Give me just a second, boys. Stop the virtual cam. Get rid of that. Move this up. Go probably around 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll do a little bit of an Ask Me Anything. So if there are any questions or super chats you want to have, or, type ideas that you have for the stream, things you've been thinking about, definitely, come hang out on Sunday. We'll do an Ask Me Anything where, I'm just paying attention to you guys in the audience. Following that, I will speak with Crod because Crod, he always has great questions, really interesting, in-depth questions. So I figured tying and Ask Me Anything to Crod and him having questions would be a great way to kind of do that. If there is a specific question you want to ask me, maybe you can hop in the Discord if it's a complicated question or something you can't fit in a super chat. Though obviously I appreciate the support from super chats. If you want to hop in the Discord, join the Discord. Links are in the description. You can do that ahead of time, and then I can let people in if they have specific questions. And then it's not 100% confirmed. I need to. I'm waiting on a final message. Right, I'll read the message now. There's been some back and forth, and I said, this Sunday evening I think will work. Yeah, I'm actually free this weekend. Also, you're talking to an ANCAP. Don't apologize for success. And I just DM'd him back and said, so, and then he reacted to that. He saw it and made a laughing emoji. He said, so are you good for Sunday? So I'm not sure exactly the time or, if we have 100% confirmation, but if so, I'm going to talk again to Noah from Midwestern Marks about queer theory. So if you want an in-depth conversation about the history, the roots of queer theory, listen to an anarcho-capitalist and a full-blown tanky go back and forth. There might be a little bit of a debate. I told him, hey, man, this is probably going to be a little bit more heated than last time. But, I want to have a good substantive conversation, which is something that I can do with intelligent well-read people. So it might get spicy, who knows? But you know, I enjoy talking to him and that audience because they're just so much better than your typical dumb Twitch poll lefty. But so you definitely want to be here Sunday. And then next week, you know, come hell or high water, you're going to see a lot more of me, you know, probably a minimum of 3 days a week going forward, just because I'm no longer picking my son up from school. So I have more time to get things done and work on the show, answer comments and things like that. So I appreciate the people that came here kind of for this weird impromptu Friday night show. I know it's not our normal time. I know a lot of you guys are enjoying your weekend, or you're going to this being like, oh shit, I missed the stream. But you know, if you missed the stream, comment below, like, share, subscribe, you know, join the Discord. That's where all the go lives go. You won't miss a stream if you're following on Discord, because I always put out when I'm going live there. If you want to see my shower thoughts, or, you know, watch me get, you know, crazy and angry, then follow me on X or Twitter, whatever you prefer to call it. And again, you know, if you want to super chat, I always answer super chats, and memberships are only $3.99. You get access to emojis and badges and stuff. But personally, I would say the super chats are more bang for your buck, because at least then I see it, and I, you know, more than just acknowledging things for the membership. You know, if you have a question or something, I always answer those. I appreciate you guys, and hopefully I'll see you Sunday. And if not, you know, we're gonna get trucking along with more regular content as I have more time. And I appreciate you guys so much. See you next.